use. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When evildoers assail me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and foes, they stumble and fall. Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war rise up against me, yet I will be confident. One thing I asked of the Lord, this I seek, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. He will conceal me under the cover of his tent. He will set me high on a rock. Now my head is lifted up above my enemies all around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and make melody to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry aloud. Be gracious to me and answer me. Come, my heart says, seek his face. Your face, Lord, do I seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger, you who have been my help. Do not cast me off. Do not forsake me, O God of my salvation. If my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will take me up. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me on a level path because of my enemies. Do not give me up to the will of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, and they are breathing out violence. I believe that I shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Last month, I finally got to spend a week with my sister face to face. It had been over a year since she and her husband had last been in the States. They live in Scotland, and they don't have the opportunity to come over to the States very often. So about once a year or once every year and a half, they make the trek across the pond and spend a few weeks at my mom's house in Southern California. And I have always been able to coordinate some of my vacation time to be able to join them, which is such an honor and a privilege, and to spend some much needed sister time with my big sister, and it is the best. My sister is 2 years older than I am, and as we have gotten older, we have gotten closer. We talk often, messaging back and forth, impromptu Skypes when we are both available, and regular scheduled family Skypes about once a month. But there is nothing like seeing each other face to face, being in one another's presence. There is nothing like being able to spend time together in person with the ones that we love. Now, I learned the importance of this, as I'm sure many of us did, during the COVID lockdown. In my church in Omaha, we were closed to the public for almost a year. We led worship in a huge, empty, lonely sanctuary, live streamed on Facebook. All my Bible studies, session meetings, and committee meetings shifted to Zoom. I'll admit that being able to see people in Brady Bunch boxes was nice, but it wasn't the same as being in the room together, face to face. There is so much that you miss. You miss the nonverbal cues. You miss what people are saying as they're on mute or trying to talk over somebody. You miss what's being said. You miss the personal aspect of being in the same room that the gathering brings. There is something about being face to face with someone, having their undivided attention as you look eye to eye. Being face to face brings with it an intimacy, a connection of knowing and being known. The kids did a great job of describing what God might look like. And I think about that all the time as how amazing it would be to be face to face with God. And our psalm this morning, Psalm 27, verse 8 says, "Come, my heart says, seek God's face. Lord, I do seek your face. Please don't hide it from me." So our Lenten journey continues this morning in Psalm 27, another psalm that's attributed to King David, a triumphant song of confidence, or as one commentator wrote, it is a song of hope. Our psalm begins, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Should I fear anyone? The Lord is a fortress protecting my life. Should I be frightened of anything? When evildoers come at me, trying to eat me up, it's they, my foes and my enemies, who stumble and fall. If an army camps against me, my heart won't be afraid. If war comes up against me, I will continue to trust in this. I have asked one thing of the Lord. It's all that I seek, to live in the Lord's house all the days of my life, seeing the Lord's beauty and constantly adorning his temple. Because he will shelter me in his own dwelling during troubling times. He will hide me in a secret place in his own tent. He will set me up high, safe on a rock. Now my head is higher than the enemies surrounding me, and I will offer sacrifices in God's tent, sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and praise the Lord. In these first 6 verses, we see the psalmist's confidence and trust in God. He uses beautiful metaphors to describe God: light, salvation, a fortress or stronghold. These metaphors speak of the protection that comes in our relationship with God. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Light shines in the darkness and dispels our fears. Salvation protects us from harm, reminding us that we have nothing to fear. And a fortress or stronghold is the ultimate defense, wrapping us in the security so we don't have to be afraid. Our psalm goes on describing the ways that we are protected when our enemies may advance, repeating again that it is when we put our complete trust in God's abiding presence that we have nothing to fear. The Message translates verses 4 through 6, saying, I am asking God for one thing, only one thing, to live with him in his house my whole life long. I'll contemplate his beauty. I'll study at his feet. That's the only quiet, secure place in a noisy world. The perfect getaway, far from the buzz of traffic. God holds me head and shoulders above all who try to pull me down. I'm headed for this place to offer anthems that will raise the roof. I love that image. Picture captured in these verses. When we are face to face with God, when we are in God's presence, dwelling with him, we are secure in the oasis that God creates for us. There really is no other place that I would rather be. And yet, we are reminded that moments of true peace are few and far between in this world. But God's presence is the one constant. As the psalmist continues in verses 7 through 10, he says, Lord, listen to my voice when I cry out. Have mercy on me and answer me. Come, my heart says, seek God's face. Lord, I do seek your face. Please don't hide it from me. Don't push your servant aside angrily. You have been my help. God who saves me, don't neglect me. Don't leave me all alone. Even if my father and mother left me all alone, the Lord would take me in. There's a shift in tone that happens here as the psalmist's focus changes to that of a petition to God. Listen to my voice. Be merciful to me. Respond to me. The psalmist pleads for God to reveal God's face, to not be hidden, and for the reassurance to know that God will not push him away. Here we see the heart of this psalm. We know there is trust in God, but there is always moments of doubt. God, don't abandon me. When things get rough, God, draw me near. When enemies come upon us, God, protect me. When I feel lost or afraid, God, be with me. Listen, God, I'm calling to you at the top of my lungs. Be good to me. Answer me. When my heart whispered, seek God, my whole being replied, I am seeking him. Don't hide from me now. You've always been right there for me. Don't turn your back on me now. Don't throw me out. Don't abandon me. You've always kept the door open. Seek God. Keep looking for God. Keep our eyes on the one who never leaves us, never forsakes us. And in the last section, verses 11 through 14, after revealing his fears and making his requests for help to God, the psalmist concludes with 3 specific requests and an affirmation of faith. He writes, Lord, teach me your way because of my opponents. Lead me on a good path. Don't give me over to the desires of my enemies, because false witnesses and violent accusers have taken their stand against me. But I have sure faith that I will experience the Lord's goodness in the land of the living. Hope in the Lord. Be strong. Let your heart take courage. Hope in the Lord. His requests: teach me your ways. Lead me down your path. Show my enemies whose side you're on. Even though there is fear, even though there are doubts, there is always hope. He writes, but I have sure faith that I will experience the Lord's goodness in the land of the living. Hope in the Lord. Be strong. Let your heart take courage. Hope in the Lord. I love the honesty in which the psalmist writes, a heart that speaks freely and with confidence that God is present. That no matter what comes, even in times when it seems that God is distant, the psalmist holds on to hope. He speaks words of encouragement to himself. Be strong, take heart, hope in the Lord. And these words, they serve as reminders for us to be strong, take courage, hope in the Lord. It all goes back to verse 8. The Message translates it, when my heart whispered, seek God, my whole being replied, I'm seeking him. Two things happen when we seek God's face. First, in making the request, this plea to seek God's face, we are asking for assurance of God's presence to be with us. All throughout Scripture, we get a glimpse of God's face being mentioned, which translates to God's presence being with the people. In number 6, we see this in the priestly benediction given to the children of Israel. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his face to you and grant you peace. When God's face is hidden, God's presence is removed. When God's face is present, God's people are assured of receiving God's care and God's blessing. And the second, when we seek God's face, we are making a commitment to be faithful to God by always seeking his face. In 2 Chronicles, after Samuel built the temple, God spoke to his people and he said this. He said, if my people who belong to me will humbly pray, seek my face, and turn from the wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal the land. Seeking God's face is an act of faith. It is a visible action that reveals belief, a relationship with God, and a commitment to following a good path. The psalmist is earnestly pleading for the face of God itself, for God's very presence to be with him. What he desires more than anything, what he requests, what he pleads for, is for God to be present. I'm seeking him. Don't hide from me now. It is important to note that he is not seeking understanding, but rather the reassuring presence of God, who has not abandoned him, even in the midst of hardship or suffering. I believe this psalm speaks to our hearts, reminding us that when we seek God, God turns his face towards us. When we seek God, we have the reassurance of God's faithfulness and presence. With that guarantee comes our ability to stand confidently. And this stance sets us apart and allows us to give testimony to the presence of God in our lives. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Imagine the day when we are finally face to face with God, when we get to see what God looks like. The day when we can see God with our own eyes, behold his glory, bask in his presence. It will be an amazing day, and that is for certain. But until then, may we continue to seek God, to know with complete confidence that God's face shines upon us, to know that even in those dark or lonely times, we are not alone. God's presence is with us. Friends, stay with God. Take